Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a framework that's designed to be a powerful truth detector. It's a tool that promises to cut right through all the emotional arguments by focusing on just one thing, the numbers. It's called the Wilson method. And this quote right here, this is the foundation for the entire method. The whole idea is that while people can twist words, spin narratives, objective math, well, that doesn't lie. So that brings us to the core concept, statistical impossibility. This is basically the line in the sand where a series of events becomes so incredibly rare, so astronomically unlikely, that calling it a coincidence just isn't logical anymore. When you cross that line, you're not looking at chance. You're looking for a cause. The logic is actually pretty simple. If the probability of something happening is practically zero, but it keeps on happening over and over again, you're probably not looking at random chance. Think of it like this. Lightning striking a spot once is rare, but lightning striking that same exact spot 10 times in a row, at that point, you've got to start looking for what's causing it. So just how impossible are we talking about here? Well, look at this number. That's the probability of just 10 independent events, each with a tiny 1% chance, all happening in a sequence. I mean, it's a number so close to zero that for all practical purposes, it is zero. This isn't just unlikely, this is a massive statistical red flag. Okay, so how do we actually get from just a simple gut feeling to a conclusion that's backed by math? The Wilson method lays it all out in a really clear 5-step process that guides the whole investigation. And the process just unfolds so logically. It all starts with simple pattern recognition, noticing those coincidences. From there, you figure out the odds of each one happening on its own. But the real magic happens in step 3. You multiply those probabilities together. After you see if the result crosses that line into impassibility, you get to the final and most crucial step, finding the cause. Who or what is the hidden hand behind that pattern? Now, theory is one thing, but the real power of this method is seeing it in action. So let's put it to work with a couple of examples, one that's pretty personal and one from the world of high-stakes finance. Let's start with a personal scenario that might feel a little familiar. Imagine your partner always seems to be working late. On the exact same nights, their ex sends them a text. The first time it happens, it's a coincidence. The second time, it's kind of odd. But when that pattern keeps repeating, you have to ask yourself, is this just really bad luck? Or is it coordination? And here's how the math just changes everything. A single instance, the text and the working late on the same night, has about a 0.5% chance. Yeah, it's unlikely, but it's possible. But for that to happen 10 times in a row, the probability just plummets to a number that's nearly impossible. The pattern transforms from suspicious to deliberate. And this is why the method is so powerful. The math completely bypasses the emotional arguments, the denials, the gaslighting. The numbers themselves are pointing directly to coordination, not coincidence. Okay, now let's apply that same logic where the stakes are millions of dollars. A company's stock consistently takes a big dip right before the CEO announces a stock buyback, which often drives the price right back up. So, is this just the market being volatile, or could it be insider trading? Again, one single instance is highly unlikely, coming in at just 0.002%. But for it to happen 5 times, the probability becomes so incredibly small it's effectively zero. This pattern just pushes the explanation away from market volatility and points it directly towards suspected manipulation. Now, in this case, the method doesn't prove guilt, but what it does is provide a really powerful, data-driven reason to investigate. It flags a pattern that demands a much deeper look into who had access to what information and who benefited from these unbelievably timely events. But a tool this powerful can be misused, right? This isn't about jumping to conclusions, it's about being a responsible analyst. So let's look at the guardrails for using the Wilson method wisely. This assessment table gives us some objective benchmarks. It shows you exactly when a pattern moves from likely coincidence to suspicious, all the way to the point of statistical impossibility. And that's the point where you have to start looking for a deliberate cause. And the math alone isn't enough. It has to be paired with a whole analyst's toolkit. That means mapping out timelines, asking who benefits from the pattern, figuring out who has control, and of course, documenting everything along the way. And this is crucial. Knowing when not to use this method is just as important as knowing when to use it. It's really designed for situations with quantifiable, independent events. If you try to apply it to super complex systems or emotionally charged situations where you don't have clear data, you could easily go down the wrong path. And look, any honest analyst has to acknowledge the method's limitations. Your analysis is only as good as the data you put into it. There could be hidden variables influencing things. And let's be honest, our own confirmation bias can make us see only the patterns we expect to see. It's a powerful tool, but it is not foolproof. So, after all that, what makes this simple mathematical approach so revolutionary when it comes to finding the truth? It's because it offers a direct path to objectivity. It just strips away all the emotion, cuts through confusing stories, and boils complex problems down to their core mathematical facts. And that allows it to reveal these hidden patterns that would otherwise stay buried under layers and layers of noise. It really all comes down to a fundamental shift in how you think. As the source material puts it, people get stuck in emotional arguments and totally miss the math. The goal is to stop debating motivations and just start counting. Once you do that, the truth often becomes pretty undeniable. And so we end up right back where we started. This is the core truth of the Wilson method. You can argue with words, but you really can't argue with the numbers. Stories can be spun any which way, but a statistical impossibility? Well, that's a hard fact that demands a real explanation. And that leaves us with a final thought. Now that you have this framework, this new way of looking at patterns and coincidences, what might you start to see a little differently? What hidden patterns might the numbers reveal in your world?